From the Clark Ford Studio in Oxford, Mississippi, MBW Digital proudly presents the Oxford Exxon Podcast.
I'd say thanks for tuning in, but why am I going to give you a round of applause for something you're supposed to do, to be frank?
And now, here are your hosts, Chase Parham.
That broadcast school has really paid off.
And Neal McCready.
I deserve to be on TV.
Welcome into this Saturday RebelGrove.com postgame podcast. Chase Parham and Neal McCready here in the Clark Ford studio. Jeffrey Wright on the phone line right now. Memphis 15, Ole Miss 10. The Rebels falling to 0-1 on the season in a game where they were pretty much non-existent offensively in the first half. Had some moments in the second half. Couldn't get the ball back there at the end. Losing by 5 to the Tigers in a game where, Neal, I'll be honest, we talked about a second ago, if you just said 15 points for Memphis, I would have thought Ole Miss wins, maybe even potentially handedly. I did not expect what happened on the offensive side of the ball in totality. However, the entire time of August camp, we've discussed the offensive line, we've discussed the inexperience, the newcomers not knowing what to expect. And at the end of the day, Memphis is not a great defensive front, and Ole Miss had no prayer of blocking them for most of the four quarters.
I said all along that there was really nothing that you could throw at me in terms of a scenario that would surprise me, and this one didn't surprise me. The offensive line was bad, period. They were anemic almost throughout. They had a couple of decent possessions in the third quarter where they did some things well. Other than that, the offensive line was bad. Matt Corral played like a redshirt freshman making his first start. Made a couple plays, did a couple of things, but made a lot of bad plays, got a little shell-shocked, I think. That didn't surprise me. Scotty Phillips had some moments, but it's hard to run behind that offensive line when you're getting beat like that up front. Braylon Sanders went down with the hamstring issue in the first half. You had to really depend on some young receivers, and they didn't really come through. Elijah Moore did a few things. The offense, that output, yes, when you look at the numbers, it's kind of shocking. But when you go back and you think about all the things that we talked about throughout fall camp, throughout the build-up to this season, about the concerns for the offense, and when people would poo-poo them, you'd say, listen, that's real. Those are real issues. They all came to fruition today. And frankly, that everything for me, as I'm kind of sitting here processing it, comes back to offensive line play over and over and over and over and over.
Jeffrey, just some quick first takes.
Yeah, I said before the game, I think when I was on with you, Chase, on Wednesday, that if you said you can look at numbers that you want to see and to know how the game would have gone. I said I wanted to see Corral's numbers and I wanted to see the red zone numbers. And Corral was 9 of 19 for 93 yards. And truth be told, like it wasn't even that good. No touchdowns. He had the interception. And in the red zone, it's a small sample size, but Memphis got in the red zone twice. They got 2 touchdowns. Ole Miss got in the red zone twice. They got a touchdown and field goal. And I think the thing that's going to be the biggest issue for Ole Miss moving forward is not so much – the offensive line is obviously bad, but I think their bigger problem is the sets that they feel like get their best players on the field are when they go heavy with the 2 H-backs. And what I noticed is that really the box. And Ole Miss's offensive line, when the box was crowded, was bad. When they started spreading them out and they had 4 receivers and a back, and even when they went empty, that was when they had their most success. But I mean, you just look at it in the first half, particularly. I mean, just look at the drives. I mean, when you look at it, first series, 3 plays, 1 yard, punt. Second series, 3 plays, 2 yards, punt. Third series, 3 plays, loss of 12 yards, punt. Fourth series, they got a field goal attempt out of it, missed it. That was the 50-yarder. Then they punted on 4 plays, 2 plays in the interception, 3 plays in a punt. Then they had the half. And they came out in the second half, and they only had 3 drives in the second half. They got the field goal, they got the touchdown, and then they got the safety. And I think for me with Corral, my biggest questions were, I don't think he's a particularly accurate thrower. I think that was displayed today. He works with some funky arm angles. It was like a lot of like sidearm. It's a lot of stuff where mechanically he was not sound. But the biggest problem that I had, and it was displayed on the fourth down when Ole Miss went for it, and his receiver saw the coverage was 4 deep, and he broke it off into what was essentially a dig route, and it was going to be wide open, and Corral threw it as if the receiver was going to keep going. Like, I just didn't sense that when he was looking at the back half of a defense that he was confident at all in what coverage looks they had. And again, it's his first start, but when you look at it in totality, Ole Miss's defensive line, I felt like for the most part, they controlled the game. They didn't blitz a ton. You look at Memphis's 2 touchdown drives, and they were on the field, I think, for Memphis had the ball for 38-41. They were on the field essentially for 2/3 of the game, and it wasn't because they weren't getting off the field. It was because Ole Miss could not do anything offensively to sustain any type of ball control.
Yeah, I thought the defense played well enough to win the game. The defense played well enough to give Ole Miss some hope in games that are winnable moving forward. Mike McIntyre obviously had a pretty good plan. Now, look, Brady White's not a great quarterback. He does not have a big arm. He's not going to challenge you down the field. But the defense did everything you could really hope for. I mean, I thought
he's not
they
a
swarmed the
good
football.
quarterback.
No, he's not. He's not at all.
Yeah.
But I thought they swarmed to the ball. I think they did a lot of things. Like you said, the defensive front played as well as it was probably capable of playing today. So from a defense standpoint, they did exactly what you sort of expect, exactly what you need from moving forward. I think the story here, because of that, is simply just the offense. It's Matt Corral. Corral also with I guess only 17 yards rushing. 15 of those came on the one play. So he had 110 total yards today, Neil. And did you feel like it was a situation of him not settling down, kind of the things we've been talking about, or simply just because there wasn't a lot of time and it was a weird deal and just kind of all of the above?
He's a redshirt freshman making his first start. You asked a lot of him. It showed that they asked a lot of him. I thought his accuracy, as Jeffrey said, was a problem, especially early in the game. He had some read issues that were problematic for him later in the game, probably early in the game as well. But listen, I keep coming back to this. When you can't run the football and you're always 3rd and 8, you're always 3rd and 9, you're always 3rd and 11, veteran quarterbacks struggle in that deal. I mean, you put Aaron Rodgers behind the chains all day long, and he's going to tell you this was a tough day. You put a rookie quarterback in that scenario, and he is absolutely a rookie. As a refresher, this guy played mop-up against Sisters of the Poor and ULM last year. He played part of a series against South Carolina, and then he played mop-up in a blowout loss to Mississippi State. That is the extent of his experience. I think when Memphis saw, hey, they can't run the ball, they were able to kind of throw some looks at him, throw some stuff at him. They came at him. They tried to rattle him. I thought, frankly, he did a pretty good job of not getting rattled, but his accuracy, as Jeffrey has talked about in the offseason, was problematic, and Ole Miss put way too much of the game in his hands.
Also put him in a situation where they only had 40.
Go
ahead, Jeffrey.
I would say I thought so. For instance, in the first half, to Neil's point about the offensive line putting, they were consistently behind the chains. I saw some people saying, why aren't they trying more wide receiver screens and whatnot? I'd like to put into perspective just how bad it was. They were getting beat immediately, and when you get beat immediately, even if you're going to do wide receiver slip screens, tunnel screens, and whatnot, I guess it's conceivable with bubbles that you can that you don't have to necessarily, even win for a little bit. But the bigger problem is for bubble screens to work, you have to have numbers on the outside. Ole Miss was losing immediately, And if you lose immediately, even the screen game doesn't work because you at least have to like get something of a punch that allows for you to at least get the snap, then to throw it out and allow for that to work. When you are just getting beat that badly up front, nothing's going to work. And the truth is, let's see, what were Scotty's numbers? 19 carries, 62 yards. He averaged 3.3 a carry. I do not know if Scotty Phillips could have legitimately gained more yardage than he did. I felt like every single run he maximized it, and those were still his numbers.
Yeah, what you just said is exactly right, and it's kind of fundamental football. If you can't block them, it doesn't really matter what you run. If you can't block them, it's not going to work. And if you get beat quickly the way that they did up front, especially tackle to tackle,
oh boy,
it just doesn't work. And again, this is a game where Memphis gave them a short field. I mean, Norvell, I don't know how he keeps those things in his pants. I mean, he had big ones today. I'll give him that. But, you know, they gave Ole Miss some, if I recall correctly, at least one short field when he went for it and didn't get it. Had a couple of shots where I would have punted and pinned them inside the 10, and he kind of went for it and didn't work out, and they gave him the football at the 40-ish yard line. He clearly trusted his defense. It tells you that inside their headsets when they're talking to each other, they being the Memphis coaching staff, they're telling each other, hey, we can stop these guys. We've got this. We've got it under control because we're winning up front. And here's the question. As you begin to move forward a little bit, Memphis's front seven, where does it stack up against what Ole Miss is going to see the rest of the way?
That's what I think the tough question to answer is, because they do have some newer guys out there. But, I mean, realistically, I think Arkansas is probably going to be better up front. Like, Arkansas did a pretty good job of recruiting to the middle of their defense this past year. I think Arkansas is probably going to be better. I think Vanderbilt will probably be better. So then you're starting to look at, I think Cal will be better defensively. I mean, to me, the only two answers are New Mexico State and CeeLo.
I mean, if you're Arkansas, and look, as we record this, they haven't even kicked off yet. But if you're Arkansas and you watch this film, and they absolutely will watch it tonight, when you watch this film, you say, we are going to put the ball in Corral's hands. We can stop the run, and we can get after the quarterback. We're going to see if we can't make him beat us, and there's no sign, at least from today, that the offense is in place for him to get that done.
Yeah, that's the thing for me here, because you can break down a 15-10 game in a lot of different ways, but at the end of the day is what did they look like, and then moving forward, what does that mean? Because, you know, Memphis did, they benefited from a couple of plays there on that touchdown that they score. Ole Miss has the face mask and then has the personal foul, the roughing the passer penalty. So you get into a lot of that minutia. But at the end of the day, Ole Miss didn't play well enough to win. Memphis had twice the number of total yards. Ole Miss couldn't get the ball back there at the end to even have a chance to go down the field. Corral makes a poor decision after a missed block on the safety. Ole Miss made no winning plays today for the most part, other than sort of getting back into the game a little bit there in the second half. They spin it to Arkansas now, where look, we've been talking about goals this whole time. We've been talking about how Ole Miss, their goal is a 6-win season. It's getting back to bowl eligibility and all those type of things. They get into a deal now where they're going to play a defense next week against Arkansas that is more physical than Memphis. They're going to play a team that has more talent on the field than Memphis. And essentially, they're going to play a game at home where if they don't win, this thing completely changes after 2 weeks with 10 games to go.
Yeah, I mean, for me, you don't want to say next week's must win, but I mean,
it is.
If they don't win next week,
it's must win.
If they don't win next week, I think the ceiling is 3 wins.
Yeah, I mean, we could split hairs, but having not seen everybody, it's hard to say that. But again, I think, and I don't want to take anything away from Mike Norvell or Memphis. They clearly have done a really good job getting people excited around that program. It was a big win for them, all of those things. But I didn't watch them today, just the eye test. You know what I'm talking about, Jeffrey? Just the eye test. And when you look at them, I didn't.
Same thing. So Dylan's sitting here, and we watched the game together. And our takeaway from today's game is Memphis has got losses coming, and Ole Miss has obviously got a lot of losses coming.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the teams that Memphis plays and what they look like, but I didn't watch Memphis and go, man, that's a dangerous team. They're not dangerous. They're not with that quarterback play. They have their running backs are nice. They have some weapons there, and I thought that.
And Patrick Taylor got hurt at the end.
Yeah.
If Patrick Taylor's hurt, I mean,
they don't have enough weapons.
Oh boy.
Yeah, they didn't really have any.
Now, I thought Kenny Gainwell looked good too.
He did. He played.
But now in fairness, he got a lot of carries late when that Ole Miss defense was gassed.
Yeah, that's the problem. I thought Ole Miss's defense, as Chase said, played well enough to win, but if you're going to leave your defense on the field that much, they're going to wear down. I mean, there's a lot of criticism out there today. How did Ole Miss give up the 3rd and 7 on the Wildcat there at the end of the game? Because they were gassed. They've been on the field too long.
They're gassed. They were selling out. I mean, it does blow my mind that the Wildcat still works in 2019. Like, it truly blows my mind when you consider that the NFL was able to figure this out after 8 weeks, but college football still hasn't. I do not get it. But with that being said, I mean, that conversion isn't what cost them the game. What cost them the game is multiple. Let's look at the starting drives here. They started with the ball at their own 49, so a yard short of midfield. They went 4 and punted. They started with the ball at the Memphis 30 and didn't get any points. They started with the ball at, both their touchdowns were relatively short field, or both their points were relatively short fields. I mean, and if you also look at how they scored you had kind of the gimmick type play, which I did think was a good play when you used Elijah Moore's misdirection and Corral ran it around the end.
Yeah, I thought that was a great call.
I thought it was a good play call.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it was kind of, it was gimmick plays. And then when Memphis scored, they were just kind of running their offense. I mean, Memphis only scored 15 points. Like, to me, if the argument today is how did Ole Miss not stop 3rd and 7, okay. But, I mean, good God, guys. I mean,
it's just not what I keep coming back to. I'm seeing some people wanting to blame it on officiating. Come on. It's SEC officials. College officials are going to miss calls. That's not why you lost the game. And you didn't lose the game because your defense couldn't get a stop late. You lost the game because you couldn't block anybody. You lost the game because you couldn't block anybody. And that is the problem. Here's the thing. Givens played. You don't get to go out in free agency and add offensive linemen.
No, I mean, left tackle's a huge problem.
It's Chase made a great point. We're sitting here, I don't know, late 3rd quarter, and he said, have you ever seen a bigger fall off than Greg Little to Michael Howard? And we're not picking on Mike Howard here. He's played hard. He's busted his butt. He stayed in the program longer than a lot of people would have, but he's not big enough. And so you have – here's my question. Moving forward, because the Memphis game's done. There's nothing you can do about it. Moving forward, what can you do up front, if anything, or what can you do? And when I say schematically, I mean that carefully. What can you do schematically to give yourself an opportunity to change? How would you – if you're Rich Rodriguez, when you get through ingesting all of the anti-nausea pills you're going to take today, how do you address this going forward against Arkansas, against Cal, against Vanderbilt, and some of these other first half of the season games that everybody's talking about?
To me, when he watches the film, I think what he's gonna realize, and I'm sure he does. Rich has seen plenty of football. The problem that he has is when they spread you out, that gives their line the best chance because their line only has to handle 5 guys in general. I mean, they're not, even when you spread someone out, most teams are not going to go with no safety. So you're probably going to have 5 on 5. The problem that he's going to have is he thinks his best chance to win is when his best players are his running backs. And he thinks that the more of those, the more plays that they have on the field, the better the chances they have are. And, you know, his experienced, you know, H-backs that are going to help out his line are his, you know, it's Pellerin and Cooley. But that just brings so many more people into the box, and they cannot handle it. So I don't know. I mean, it's a no-win situation. I mean, the reality of it is, I mean, in terms of this year, I don't know if there's an answer, because the answer is you got to go get, I don't know, 5 offensive linemen.
Well, that's kind of where I was going with this.
They basically have. They've gone out and signed. They've committed a bunch of offensive linemen, but those guys don't help you until a couple of years down the road. They've got Nick Broker. It's what I was just kind of thinking about. If you're them, do you think about, hey, let's look at this. The guys that we have aren't particularly effective. Do we put Nick, if you're Rich Rodriguez and Jack McNeil, do you put Nick Broker and Jeremy James on the field and say, hey, they're freshmen, but they're talented freshmen, and if we're going to get beat up front, let's get beat up front with guys while we're getting them some experience for the long haul?
I think you have to, because also on top of experience for the long haul, the other aspect of it is you need guys that even if someone schemes them and whatnot, you need guys that physically have a chance if they get beat off the snap that can recover. And it's obvious that even experienced offensive linemen that get beat, that are physically mismatched, the experience was not helpful today. So, you know, it goes back to the line from the Avengers. Like, you know, do you consider experience, or do you consider experience failure? Because, I mean, they were just today experience didn't help them.
It'll kind of put you not really on the spot, but the question we've been talking about all season. You've seen a game now. It's just one. They'll play Arkansas next week at 6:30 in Oxford. But as you watch this, we've made a lot of predictions, a lot of guesses on win totals. Is it more of the credit card bill being due than maybe you anticipated coming into the season?
No, I always knew the debt was going to be heavy. I mean, it's one of those deals where you push the limit, and then you push the limit, and then the credit card company sent you the statement that said, hey, we're not extending your credit limit, and we're kind of raising interest rates on you. And it's basically you don't have any available credit. It's time to start paying this thing. And that's painful. It's always painful unless you kind of luck into some money that you can put down on it. You know what I mean? I mean, so, no, I knew this had a chance to be this way.
I mean, I think that's the other aspect of it. Neil and I talked this week, and in general, your offensive linemen are going to be the older guys on the team because it's just the way that it works. Talented receivers, talented skill guys, even talented defensive guys, they can get on the field at a quicker rate. But usually your offensive linemen are, you know, those are usually guys that are fourth-year juniors or, you know, third-year sophomores and fifth-year seniors or fourth-year seniors. And those are the recruiting classes that had a lot of holes. Those are the recruiting classes that there may have been another 4-star receiver that Ole Miss could have gone and signed and could have improved that recruiting ranking. And there's just a lot of holes, man.
So that we don't get accused of skipping big picture, and I always make fun of overreaction Monday, and so I'm going to be careful that I don't do it here because I think too much big picture here is exactly that, overreaction. But you asked Jeffrey a minute ago, Chase, how big is next week? From a WL standpoint, I don't know. From a perception standpoint, from the way people feel standpoint, from the way that the fan base feels, it's critical. It's more critical now than it would have been had they won today, had they generated
or even lost a different type of game even.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Because, I mean, I'll be honest, I watched this game and I thought, what does this look like? And look, is this fair or not fair? I have no idea. Jeffrey will know what I'm talking about because I'm sure he watched this game too. It looked like the 05 Memphis Ole Miss game with Spurlock and Orgeron.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what it really looked like. It looked like the 04 Memphis game between when Spurlock got his first start and Ole Miss looked inept on offense, like could not move the ball. I mean, I think they scored 13, but
it was 20 to 13.
One was a defensive score. Yeah, and that I mean, you know, like every time Ole Miss got the ball, you knew they had to something kind of had to go weird, or like, you know, they basically there had to have a big play, or because you just didn't think they could move it.
But so, kind of finishing my thought, if Ole Miss loses on Saturday to Arkansas, it's 0-2 with Southeastern Louisiana coming here, which was always going to be a hard sell anyway from a ticket standpoint. It becomes almost impossible to get people excited about that game, and it's the middle of September, and I think it takes some of the buzz away from the Cal game. On the flip side, if they found a way to beat Arkansas and then they'll beat Southeastern Louisiana, you get another opportunity to generate some buzz against Cal. No one's going to hold an Alabama loss against them, no matter what it looks like. And then Vanderbilt comes in. It's still the same scenario we talked about, but they've reduced their margin for error dramatically in a loss to Arkansas, and you start putting into play a scenario for so much fan base unrest midway through the season that I don't think it's realistic that a coaching change happens. I just don't. I really don't. I keep getting that question. I don't think it's realistic. A chancellor's not getting named until, I don't know, you're on the committee, Chase, what, first week of November?
Yeah, at the earliest.
And so he's going to come in right away and just make an AD change in 14 days. And I don't buy that. And then all the money, I just don't buy it. But you will an 0-2 start puts into play a scenario in which that gets talked about so much that it almost feels like a fait accompli, even though it won't be.
Yeah, perception-wise, next week is as big as it's possible. I mean, you've lost so much capital in 1 week with not just the loss, but the way it looked, that next week is pivotal. It's huge to win the game, or I mean, and look, this is a very minimal deal as far as what you gain from this, but at the very least, look very competent on both sides of the football.
I think you have to win, because the truth is, it's not like Arkansas. It's not as if Arkansas is going to be fighting for the Western Division. And when you start looking at competition, you know, Arkansas is not the, you know, if you can't beat them, what I think is going to be tough to overcome. I actually think what Matt's doing makes sense. Like, I think the way that he's recruiting, I think the way that he is trying to build the program, I actually think it is the right way to go about it. But the problem is the emotional response right now, to me, it seems, from a large portion of the fan base. I don't know if it's everyone. The emotional response seems that the average fan has decided that the only way Ole Miss is ever – that they're ever going to get back on board and that Ole Miss is going to come back is whenever they get their next head coach. And so then you start to fight that, fighting apathy, fighting support. It's tough to recruit when you got 25,000 people in the stands. Like, I think it's an uphill battle.
Yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy once it starts.
Exactly.
That's what it is.
Yes. And like, you can't apply context, and you can't offer the reasons for why things are the way they are, because in the end, it's just an emotional reaction, and the emotional reaction is just burn it to the ground.
But something can become such a prevailing thought that a new administration walks in and says, well, this is a way to engender some capital right away. And so it becomes something that is perhaps on the table. I don't think it's financially on the table. I know what people say about the other way, and I don't think it really makes a lot of sense, frankly. I know I'll get criticized for that, and I'm setting myself up to get yelled at on a message board, but it's genuinely how I feel. But a loss to Arkansas, it gets ugly. It would be an ugly couple of weeks around here, because a win over Southeastern Louisiana won't do anything to put any of that foam stuff on the Flames. And then Cal comes in and a loss to them, and, man, people just start pouring, to continue the parable, people just start putting really dry wood and like that really dry pine straw and gas and stuff on the flames, and the damn things are shooting up all over the place, and it looks really bad. And by losing to Memphis, you have created a situation where you would be advised, obviously, to beat Arkansas. And frankly, and again, I haven't seen Arkansas play. I think Arkansas will be a better football team than the one that Ole Miss just lost to.
I think so, too. I mean, I don't believe in Ben Hicks, but, I mean,
he can't be worse than the kid they just played.
Not going to be any worse.
Yeah.
And Ben Hicks is going to be very similar to Brady White.
They are very similar.
Ben Hicks is going to have better receivers than Brady White. But, I mean, really what it's going to come down to, there's going to be this reaction of Arkansas was, 0-8 last year. They were 2-10. I get it. There is context that Arkansas is obviously better this year. But if you lose to that team, it's that reaction of if we can't beat them. I mean, I don't think a Vanderbilt win is going to save it, and I'm not sure that they'll beat Vanderbilt either. I'm not sure if Vanderbilt is better or worse than Arkansas at this point.
Guys,
I don't know.
Here's the thing. I mean, we're doing this. It's me beating a drum to death, and I'm sure people right now are screaming at me to stop talking about the offensive line. But if you can't get the offensive line fixed, there are 2 games on the schedule that are automatic wins. 2. If you can't fix the offensive line, damn right you can lose to Vanderbilt. Absolutely. If you can't fix the offensive line, you can absolutely lose to Arkansas. You can absolutely lose to Cal, who's going to have a good defense. If you can't fix the offensive line, I mean, how many? It's cliche, but how many times have you heard the old coach pull up his britches and say, "It all starts in the trenches, boys," because it all starts in the trenches, boys.
Well, because it's very simple. Like the narrative that football is somehow some type of particle physics is mind blowing. If you can't win up front, it doesn't matter how creative you get in play calling and what. Nothing works because the play's over before it starts.
Yeah.
And then on defense, if you're blowing it up before it starts, it's the same idea. Like
you cover up. I mean, if Arkansas, let's say, is bad in the secondary, but if they're winning up front play after play after play, you don't get to exploit that weakness very often. Yeah, you might break a play here and you might break a play there. And Ole Miss had a couple of big plays today, but you're not gonna trick your way into wins. You're gonna win by running the football, getting ahead of the chains, putting the defense in a situation where it can't pin its ears back, where the defense doesn't know what's coming. 3rd and 2 is a lot harder to defend than 3rd and 10. It's just I know I'm winning a Pulitzer here, but it is. 3rd and 2, you can't go, hey, man, they're throwing here. I might run it. You can't say they're running here. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, the flip side of it is, like, for the most part, yes, Memphis converted a few 3rd and longs, but Memphis was only 35% on 3rd down. Like, when they got them into 3rd and long, they usually were getting off of the field. I mean, the problem is on the flip side, Ole Miss was getting into 3rd and 8, and you legitimately thought there is no chance that they are going to convert this.
Ole Miss did not convert a 3rd down until late in the 3rd quarter.
I think it was 5 minutes left. Ole Miss was 1 of 10 on 3rd down.
Well, they started their first 7 drives. They started with running plays, and I think their best gain was 3 yards.
That doesn't work.
No, that's what I was saying. Like Scotty Phillips, I think that was what we were talking about at half. It's like their longest run was 3 yards, and it was, I believe, Scotty was hit at the line of scrimmage.
No, he had no free release to the line of scrimmage on any run in the first half. None. It's a story. It is what it is.
The story is the offensive line.
I think the biggest takeaway, and the reason why I think you're going to see the emotional response that you are, is we just watched a game where, as you mentioned, like, this is a program that's building. They just played Memphis. Memphis was favored in the game. They won the game, and you watched the game and you felt like Memphis was the better team. If you were watching the game, you felt like when Ole Miss got back into the game that they were going to steal one. Had Ole Miss, let's say the safety doesn't happen, or let's say Ole Miss forced to stop and they got the ball back and they would have scored. You would have felt as if Ole Miss stole a game rather than Ole Miss just found a way to win in the end because they were better.
Yeah, Ole Miss covered today. They covered.
Well, the line closed at 3.5. So
okay, well, for purposes that we saw on Thursday,
hats off to the
five and a half on Thursday.
Hats off to the boys in Vegas.
Okay, fair enough. But my point is still standing. They did better than Vegas technically had it. I mean, I get that's dumb, but it's playing to your point. Is you still watched it and went, ugh.
Yes.
Ugh.
That's the point. Like, Ole Miss met expectations, and their expectations from the objective observers, they met expectations, and they were still the inferior team.
Yeah. I mean, they just got popped from a total yardage standpoint. At the end of the day, Memphis dominated the majority of this football game. Ole Miss had, half the number of total yards?
Yeah, that's why you just can't pin the damn thing on officiating and stuff. You can talk about that stuff, but it's absolutely.
Ole Miss just had a game where Memphis had more rushing yards than Ole Miss had total yards.
Yeah, Memphis had 364 for the game. Ole Miss had 173. 364
Memphis
to 173.
ran it for 192.
Yeah, so we'll see. Ole Miss and Arkansas next Saturday, 6:30 for that. Obviously, plenty of coverage at rebelgrove.com. Plenty of podcasts throughout the week as well, as we'll turn our attention to the Hogs and I guess what happens with the Tigers from here on out. But Memphis has losses coming as well. I do not see 12-0 with this group of guys from Memphis. So for Jeffrey, for Neil, I'm Chase. We will talk to you again on Monday.